thank you all for taking time out of your day. Like I said, when I initially got the email about the film, it was already on like my list of like however many films that I'm trying to like squeeze in around parenting responsibilities. So it's very much appreciated that I've had the opportunity to see the film, and that we can have a chat about the film as well. So I know sort of start off by saying that, but I guess we should probably start at the beginning, and I guess, how did this idea originate?
So Jonas and I were traveling from Calgary to Edmonton in Canada, from one film festival to another one with our last film that played at Glasgow, James versus His Future Self. And we started talking about what we want to do next, and the kind of film we want to do. And I think both of us wanted to do something different than we'd done before, something that was a bit more challenging. And so Jonas was always interested in doing kind of what is more or less a two-hander, or like a really small kind of chamber piece with just like a couple actors, minimal locations, just really, really all about the acting. And I said, that's interesting for me, but I want the stakes to be like as big as humanly possible. So that's what got us started with this idea. And then we went back, and this was pre-COVID.
This is pre-COVID. This was in September of 2019, and we were pitching ideas back and forth in the car. Well, what about this? What about a murder mystery? Well, what about this? And then I said, okay, what about two actors, a marriage that's crumbling, or a relationship piece, and it's just two actors and their relationship? And Jeremy went, yeah. I mean, I can work with that, but my version of that, the world is literally ending outside the door of their house. And my initial reaction was, that's not what I'm trying to. And then within seconds, I got excited about it and thought, well, this is an amazing context to have as an exterior. And within 12 hours of us hatching that idea, we had, I think Amanda already signed on. We immediately called her when we got to Edmonton and pitched her on this idea. And right away, she was like, yep, I'm in.
Yeah, I worked with Jeremy before in Sex After Kids, and Jonas and we hadn't worked together, but have known one another, and I really respect him as a performer. And so it was a no-brainer, particularly because it was so loose at the beginning that we all had a chance to sort of collaborate together. And it was intriguing at the time, this idea of the world coming to an end because of a pandemic or a scary situation that was only familiar to me through, like, I guess, scarlet fever or something about 100 years ago, not anticipating that in 3 months it would come our way anyway. So it was a thrill to just sign on sort of blindly.
I mean, the three of you did, collaborate, you've all got writing credits. How did that collaboration work between the three of you?
A lot of this. A lot of this.
Yeah, mostly this.
Yeah.
Mostly this.
Yeah.
We just, because we wanted a loose framework and we wanted to play within the world and realm of kind of secrets as well. So, it's kind of a non-traditional script in that all of us had, I mean, that's not true for all of us. I had everything, and then different, like Jonas had certain pieces and Amanda had certain pieces. And then between the three of us, we had the whole thing. So that way I could keep some surprises from them for while we were shooting and have some fun that way. But we just back and forth, we came up with the whole backstory together, and created like the whole world of these characters, where they came from. And then just started playing from there.
And it was I mean, the three of us really hatched the story, but the other actors were brought in early and got to collaborate with Jeremy and with Amanda and I on their story and their backstory, their history. So we kind of co-created the relationships in the film in a really exciting, interesting way. I mean, as Jeremy said, the impetus was we wanted to make a film in a way that we hadn't made a film before. Normally, Jeremy and I, we've written scripts together and we work really hard and we bat it back and forth and it's very insular. This was much more collaborative. Jeremy was the master, though. He he had the blueprint. He knew all of the secrets, and he had all of the intricacies. He had the whole movie in his head, in a really exciting way that even his co-writers, Amanda and I, didn't have all of the pieces until we were kind of up and running on the ground. It was really an energetic way to make a film.
And I see, you started this before the pandemic, and then, as you're starting to work on it, a pandemic happened. What were you guys thinking? Was there any thought of, do we need to change this, or were you always, committed to seeing this through?
Yeah, I think if anything, it made us, because we were always going to make it on a really small scale with very small cast, very small crew. And so in a way, I think we just looked at each other and went, well, as soon as it's safe to shoot again, it's kind of the perfect film to make during a pandemic, because we could all kind of bubble and isolate. The place, the farmhouse that we shot it at is in my family. It's my family farmhouse. So a lot of us stayed there. We a hotel in town gave us the entire floor of the hotel, so that way we just had that for our cast and crew, so we didn't interact with any other people. So it didn't really change that much for us, other than the typical COVID protocols everyone has to go through on set. We still kind of made the same movie I think we would have made no matter what.
And because we had been preparing nonstop, like we didn't take a break in between when it hit, because we did have the luxury of getting together and Zooms and phone calls. We were up and running and ready the moment it was safe. I believe we were one of the first films in Southern Ontario to get going. So there was no hesitation whatsoever. We jumped right on board.
Yeah, if anything, COVID helped speed it along, because we were all home and had time to work on something like this.
But it was highly unusual getting. I mean, I'm sure everybody remembers the first time they interacted with a group after quarantine, after lockdown. So we'd all been in our houses for 8-9 months, and suddenly we're with a group of 15 people, 15 people in a farmhouse for a few weeks. And at first it was so strange interacting, but it was also just emotional. It was amazing, because by the end of the period, we were all so comfortable with it, and we had bubbled so safely that we have like barbecues and like group dinners, and just to be socializing and raise a glass with somebody and look somebody in the eye without having to look through their mask was amazing.
I mean, I guess, we're talking about the pandemic, and for the people that won't have seen the film yet, can somebody talk us through the pandemic that is featured in Ashgrove?
Yeah, sure. We don't like to use the word pandemic, because I'm calling it a global crisis. I think I want to pivot, say there's a global crisis. So in the world of Ashgrove, which is in a slightly very near future, a crisis has affected the world's water supply. So humanity, who need water to survive, are suddenly dying from toxicity in the water, and there are very few people on planet Earth who are on the precipice of trying to save us and solve this crisis. And Amanda plays Dr. Jennifer Ashgrove, who is sort of one of the world's leading water scientists, who's very close to solving it. And in the process of trying to get through her scientist writer's block and figure out the last piece of the puzzle, she goes away for the weekend with her husband, played by me, and we have the sort of, our marriage is in crisis as well as the world. And at the course of trying to heal the marriage and reconnect, we come to understand that our ability to do that will literally determine the fate of humanity. So it's a microcosmic relationship story, but with this sort of connection to this grand calamity that's happening.
And to your question, none of us are scientists. And because it was such a collaborative experience, I have to give a shout out to Christine Horn, who plays, you've seen the film, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. The amount of research that Christine did is, I'm sure she could sub in for now a water scientist or a scientist of some sort. She did so much research, and we had friends. Jonas, you had a friend reach out has like water science in his background, and so while we didn't get into the scientific specifics, we had a lot of support and a lot of backup when it came to just figuring out what water scientists do. I didn't realize they existed, or I didn't care. But then the year that we did it, we had a wealth of support, which was really helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I guess the next question would be, I know you guys helped create these characters, but what was it about, Jennifer and Jason that, made you guys so excited to play them?
I can speak first. Really because of the way that we did it and the way we sort of shaped these characters, it became insanely personal very quickly. I've come on board projects where the characters are developed, and of course, I bring pieces of my life or pieces of my history to it, but nothing where I'm able to shape very personal moments. The year before, I had gone through a divorce and lost my father. And so I found that we all just shared very personal stories, and I got to know this character through sharing my own stories. So it was something I was really wanted to play. And then Jonas sharing some of his stories, I suddenly started to feel like I had love for his character. And so at the beginning, it was it was exciting, and it was a story about a marriage that's failing, and that's something that's familiar to me, or I think familiar to anyone who's been married for the amount of time that we all have been married. But it wasn't until we started to sort of unearth our own personal secrets that I really started to get excited about playing this character.
Yeah, and for me, it was always
Oh,
I was always interested in oh, am I back? I was interested in examining the psychology and the emotional state of the person who's the partner or the home support system for the individual that's tasked with saving the world. I mean, I imagine I didn't know who Fauci was at the time, but ultimately, I guess Fauci probably has a partner, a wife at home who has to live with this sort of weight and this burden, and what that would do to a relationship, a marriage, a romance. It was an interesting angle well before the pandemic hit to look at something like that. It became so much more tactile once we were in the middle of the pandemic, so much more visceral and yeah.
missed that. We lost you
The
there,
last
Jonas.
word.
The most brilliant thing I could have possibly said was said in that moment, and I can't repeat it because it's too articulate to repeat.
I guess my next question would be to Jeremy. You're known for doing comedy. This is obviously a more dramatic role, a more dramatic film. What was that experience like?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I always have a touch of drama in my films anyway, and for me that's the most kind of like exciting, juicy, emotional stuff, and the comedy is always a way to let that pay off for me. So there was something really freeing about not having to worry about a laugh or a joke and just letting a scene be. And there are some moments in the film that I think play on the humorous side that are light and fun. But it was kind of very freeing to not have to go, oh, I need to make sure this is not only engaging as a story, but is also funny and hit a joke every 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever it is, right? So there's something very freeing about just going, oh, let me just like focus on my skills as a director, both like with performance and actors, story and visuals, and like let that comedy side just kind of linger in the background. And if something pops up in this, great, but it wasn't going to burden me.
And there's some great moments between Jennifer and Jason that feel really natural, and I guess it sort of leads on from what's been discussed with you guys, having so much involvement in the characters and spending this time together before. But I just wondered if there was anything that sort of came up while you were filming that wasn't necessarily in the script that you sort of maybe you captured and like, yes, let's keep this.
Here?
All the time.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
most of it, because we did keep kind of a very loose nature to it. We had like, a scripted outline, script format, but we let things go. I'd play around with doing different versions of scenes just to try and try some things out and see how that went. And a lot of that ended up in the picture. I think that ukulele song that Jonas sings on the thing, we made that up that afternoon because we were, well, fun spoiler that you'll see when our making of is released. When we were shooting all the canoe stuff, we dropped the canoe. We fell into the water with the camera, and we lost the camera for most of the day. And while we were trying not to panic, wondering if we were going to get a replacement camera by the end of the day, Jonas and I and someone else, we sat in my hammock at the farm and we wrote the ukulele song as a way to like distract ourselves from all the painful things we were thinking of while Amanda was recovering from, because Amanda helped us hike through the bush, ended up getting like the worst, is it stinging nettle? Is that what you got, Amanda? Yeah. So she had this burning sensation on her leg. So she's healing herself, and Jonas and I were in a ukulele and a hammock playing the ukulele. So
and anytime with independent films, when you're sort of under the gun and rushing to get your day, in reference to that scene, we were losing light, I believe. We wanted to do another shot.
We had like about a half hour to shoot that scene.
Yeah. And so instead of doing multiple setups that had I think you guys had intended to do multiples, or at least 2 setups.
Yeah.
2 or 3. We
kept it limited, yeah.
We sort of just crammed it all in, and then just magic comes from that when you just know that there's pressure, but then you sort of, if you know that you don't have a chance to do it 2 or 3 takes, and you're not preparing for, a close, and you're getting it all in your head, when you know you just have one shot, you let it go, and that's where the magic happens. Yeah. We had a couple of those moments.
And all the stuff in the canoe between Amanda and Jonas is improvised, because Jonas is not amazing in a canoe.
I forgot about that. Thank you for bringing it up. Oh God, so early on in the press, I get to talk about this. Yeah, all of the stuff in the canoe was most definitely improvised, because Jonas, there were some rapids. At times we were over 2 to 3 feet of water, and while that sounds, fine for other people, that can be quite dangerous. And so Jonas had a mild panic attack, but we made it through, and it helped. It
worked. The scene works. Yeah.
I think in answer to your question, Kat, there were lots of opportunities throughout the shoot where we where we rolled with what we had in front of us, and it was off script, and a lot of it is very much what you picked up on is accurate. There's a lot of our own voice in these characters, and a lot of that stuff went off script, and yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot about that. I'm so sorry, Kat. I forgot about that for like a year. Oh God, and it's all coming back to me now. It's so good. I apologize. Carry on.
It really works. That having these bits in, it does make for a much richer viewing experience when you can sort of like see through the characters to the people, like people beyond them. So that definitely, I think that's definitely going to shine through when people get a chance to sit down with the film. I guess when I was watching it, sort of as much as the world crisis is sort of kept to the background, I was so thirsty while watching this film. It's because there's the bit at the beginning where it's that they're having to ration their water for the toxicity and stuff, and I just was like, I'm really thirsty. It's
Wow.
I think
it's really interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was the same when I saw the James Franco 127 hours. He's got like this tiny little bottle of water to last him 127 hours, and I was sat there with like this massive soft drink, just drinking it in, feeling really, really bad. So I guess, a piece of advice to people watching it at Glasgow would be,
part of the fun for us of conceiving of this world and writing the film was getting to come up with interesting ways that humanity would adapt to having to ration water and keep very, very close count of how much water they're consuming, how toxic it's making their body. It's really interesting. All of this happened before COVID. All of this happened before the pandemic. And as we were bringing this film to life and starting to get ready to shoot it, the world started to come up with all of its own rapid tests and the signage that you'd see everywhere. Like watching humanity adapt to the pandemic in real time while we're creating our own version of a global crisis and trying to come up with our own little gadgets, and in the casual way in which the characters utilize them, and that familiarity they have with it. It was just an interesting parallel. But the water thing, I'm getting thirsty now just thinking about it too.
And also, just the idea that because we're not as hydrated as we would be, I don't know if you caught it, just the amount of times we're moisturizing our hands or using lip balm, or just little nods like that don't have to hit you over the head. But just like Jonas said, you adapt very quickly to your circumstances. And so in the COVID related world, there were, fashionable masks and cute little hand sanitizer carriers. And for us, it was moisturizer and lip balm.
Yeah, I say it was really strange, as much as I could drink water, just seeing people not be able to just made me, I don't know. But sort of moving on from that, the film is going to get in front of audiences at Glasgow. What do you all hope that people will take when they sit down with this film?
I don't know. I just kind of roll with it. I try not to go in with any expectations, and then that way I'm open to whatever people get from it, right? Because again, this is such a departure for me, and it's kind of a unique film unto itself too. It's entirely a relationship drama, but there's more going on, right? It's a bit of a thriller in its own way. It doesn't quite fit into any one tidy little box in terms of a genre, and that's kind of exciting for me. So I'm just kind of really interested to see what people take away from it.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy and I are so used to going into these screenings with our comedies, and you kind of know what you want from the audience when they're watching a comedy, right? But with this, yeah, we really, there's mystery. The film has these secrets, within it, and some, it redefines itself. You think you're watching one thing, and you realize something else entirely is going on. It's got all of these layers that we don't quite know, and that's why we're so excited to go to Glasgow and watch it with an audience. It's been a while. We've held on to it because we wanted to show it to audiences. We wanted the experience of watching this movie with audiences and seeing it, how people respond to it in a live setting. So I for one am extremely excited. I couldn't be more excited for the premiere.
And for me, it would be a forgiveness. At least that's a through line, or sort of the drone note that I had written down for my character, because like we've been saying, everyone has a certain amount of secrets in the film, and it's watching these characters sort of navigate these secrets, how to overcome them, and when they do what they do with the information that they're given, especially when you're under the pressure cooker of a world crisis, because it sort of really parallels right now what we're all still going through, and just families in general and what they've gone through being housed together, and rifts that have occurred in families. I'm talking about, present day, our current world. And I think that I really hope that people watch and see just how terrifying and difficult and scary and emotional it is to forgive, but ultimately it is possible, even during a world crisis.
Oh.
And I guess my final question would be, once this one is out in the world, have you guys got your next projects lined up? Anything that you can talk about?
We've all done projects, I think, since this, that are kind of waiting to come out. Yeah, we've all made multiple, at least one or two films each that are coming out in the next little while. So, yeah, it'll be 1 year.
Brandon Cronenberg's Infinity Pool coming out, and we don't know when it's coming out, but that's a very, very, very different film than this. This is much more family friendly, and I wouldn't even really say this film is family friendly.
No.
In comparison, wow.
Yeah.
But in comparison, yeah, it's a Disney film.
Yeah, in comparison to a Cronenberg movie, yeah, I guess so. And I've got a sexy romantic comedy called The End of Sex that we just finished shooting, that I wrote and that I act in, and it's going to come out. That'll be out in the fall. And Jeremy has a film too that he shot in the Cayman Islands.
Yeah, so I shot a film just a couple months after this one. It's a film that I had in gestation for many years, and suddenly everything came together. So I was whisked off to the Caymans and it'll be coming out. It's going to start doing a festival run itself, probably maybe this fall. But we're just navigating that, and I think the title now, it's changed a few times, but I believe the title now is called Daniel's Gotta Die, and it's a
I like that better. I
it's
like
a comedy
that.
thriller. Oh,
That's a
good.
good one.
So
I like it.
it's a comedy thriller.
Well, I will thank you all for your time, and I wish you the best of luck in Glasgow.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
Best of luck
Pat.
to your 3-year-old.